This is our only way into Homs, a city under siege. A secret tunnel to rebel-held areas, their sole link to the outside world. And above us, a killing ground. Tonight, Panorama takes you inside the Syrian regime's bloodiest assault on its own people. Over 4 months, we were smuggled in and out to cover a life or death struggle for democracy.
I've never seen a ferocity, the sheer bloody mindedness of them to eradicate the place of both buildings and people.
Now the uprising in Homs has been crushed, and the regime is facing allegations of war crimes. Still, Western governments agonize. Arming the rebels could lead to civil war. But if they don't, how else can the killing be stopped?
أطفال عم تتشرد، أطفال عم تنقتل، ما حرام عليك؟ ليش؟ مشان شو؟ لأنه طلبوا الحرية؟
We first entered Syria late last year, illegally, from neighbouring Lebanon. The regime doesn't allow free access for journalists. For us, this is the only way in. We follow men running guns to the insurgents. Each carries 3 rifles. The last smugglers to pass this way, just a few hours earlier, were ambushed by an army patrol. The next day, activists lead us into Homs. They're risking their lives to help us. Final destination, the district of Baba Amma. We're warned, if the army spots us, they will shoot. The city we've entered is Syria's 3rd largest. Homs is the toughest centre of resistance to the country's police state. Nowhere more than the district of Baba Amma, home to 30,000 people. That night we're taken to a street protest. However tiny, this is part of what they call Free Syria. For the protesters, just being here could mean arrest. This is an act of defiance. This is the Syrian uprising. They've been doing this every day for nearly a year. And they have to protest here, in these side streets, or risk being shot. They exercise liberties they've only dreamt of before, like mocking the president. Bashar Assad and his father before him have ruled over Syria for 40 years. The regime says these people are criminals and terrorists. Dissent is met with brute force. In Baba Amma, they're hemmed in by armoured vehicles. In the district streets, the fear is suffocating. Surrounded by children and grandchildren, we meet Rashida Al-Yassin. She tells me she lost 3 generations of her family in the past few months. Her grandson Khalid was killed by Syrian forces. He'd simply gone out to get food.
On Friday, there was no bread, so he said, I will bring you some from our house. On the way, a shell came down and hit him on his shoulder.
Her son, Ali, was shot and killed as he joined a protest after praying at the mosque.
Given our situation, I expected something like this. The way they're hitting us, I expected such a thing. The protest was peaceful. They were holding olive branches and shouting, "God is great."
Her husband and a brother-in-law died too. In response, militiamen have taken to the streets. They're here, they say, to protect the people, part of a new force, the Free Syrian Army. All are deserters from the government forces.
They told us to shoot the protesters. I refused. I cannot kill my own countrymen. The officers are pigs. I turned my gun around and shot at the officer that gave the order. I shot at him and ran.
Almost from the beginning, it's been Syrian government propaganda that armed groups, or armed gangs as they're described, are supporting the opposition. Now, after months of protesters being shot down in the streets, that myth has become reality. More and more are joining the insurgency. A gun battle signals another defection. Soldiers are running into Baba Amma under cover of darkness, fired on by members of their old unit. 5 make it out, but a 6th man does not.
We heard him screaming, but then we were under heavy fire. We couldn't go back to get him. The other soldiers were chasing us.
How many follow these men to join the Free Army will determine the outcome of the revolution. New front lines were emerging, following sectarian divisions. Most of the country is Sunni Muslim, but its rulers come from a minority sect, the Alawites. Syria isn't yet a simple story of Sunnis against Alawites and their allies, the Shiites and Christians. But it could become that. From Baba Amma, it was starting to look like a war of neighbourhood against neighbourhood. Abu Muhammad is one of its defenders. Before the uprising, he was a tobacco smuggler. He says there was no other work for Sunni Muslims. Now he's one of those in charge. He says government snipers attack from just across the road. The gun